Welcome to the UX Teacher Prep Podcast, the ultimate destination for educators who aspire to break into the field of user experience and product design. Your host, Z Arnold, a 15-year teacher turned UX researcher, is here to guide, coach, and mentor you through every twist and turn as you make your career transition into tech. If you're ready for a more satisfying career and lifestyle, and you want the balance to unleash your creativity, this podcast is for you. Now for the show.
All right, Shaine, it is so great to have you back on the show. How have you been?
I've been good. Likewise, I appreciate you having me on again.
For those who have not heard your first interview, can you just start by telling everybody a bit about your current role and who you are?
Yeah, I am digital CX manager for a global insurance company, which allows me to my position, I'm more so the one that does insights now. So I take the user experience and convert those insights into actionable business decisions.
Right. Got it. And you've been in that role for how long now?
I just finished the year last month, so that's just good on me.
Okay. Congrats. And so we know that before that you were in the teaching space, right? And you were an educator teaching what subject?
Math and English. I was a special education teacher.
Okay. So today I want to talk about accessibility in UX, and for two reasons. One, because I'm passionate about the topic and I know for sure that there's a connection between this type of work and the work that we did when we were teachers. And two, now that I'm in the design space contributing to student experiences, I deal with accessibility concerns every day. And I'm curious what that looks like for people in other industries. So I'm in the educational technology space. I know you're in a different type of space. So I was just curious what that looks like for different people across other organizations.
I think more so when I want to say that my thoughts and opinions are of my own. They are not representative of my company. But I will say that within the insurance space, you understand that you're dealing with a different type of clientele, primarily Gen X, baby boomers. So they're really stuck in their ways and they do things, based off of routine. So it's hard to think of accessibility for them, or it's hard to broach that topic with them, because for them, it's like, hey, I've been doing this for the past 25, 30 years. I don't understand why I would need to change anything. But what I do notice is that something that we start to implement, some of the stuff that I've started to implement, is just targeting things a little different and looking at the micro instead of the macro. And what I mean by that is that something as simple as like including subtitles, right? Very small subtitles are on the show that we watch now, and it's not like I turn them on. It's just there, and so you turn them off. And that's something that I brought up in some of the promotional videos that we've deployed. And although it's small, it makes a huge impact, because now people are not just following along with what's being said. They can actually read it and see it. And that's something that I used to do when I was in special education. Kind of taking what's being said in class and trying to translate it to them in a way that's essentially like a subtitle. They could follow along what's being said, whether it's some sort of a screen reader or printing a copy of the lesson and providing it to them so that they can follow along as they're receiving it in class.
I think one of the beautiful things about accessibility in design is just we're not only practicing to make our products and services usable for people with disabilities, but when we do that and when we focus on making things usable for people with disabilities, we then are able to reach even more people, even without disabilities, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think that's really important. And, I do encounter some people who are also stuck in their ways where, they don't want to change things, but it's a lot, right? It's a lot to kind of overhaul a product, especially when you're trying to meet some, WCAG guidelines and things like that. So it's a lot to take on when you're trying to revamp an entire product.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So how did your experience as a teacher kind of shape your approach to how you do accessibility and inclusion in design today?
Well, I want to focus more so on how I used to build lessons. So I would 15 to 1 self-contained environment when I was teaching Algebra 1. So I would receive lesson plans, or I would receive kind of the curriculum map and exactly what we want to do beforehand. And obviously, I'm in ICT classes as well as a self-contained. But when it comes to my self-contained, I realize that when I've done in the ICT, I may have to kind of, I won't say strip it for parts, but I have to get down to the meat of it in a whole different way. And I have to look at the entire spectrum of the class that I am teaching. So that's adding visuals. I mentioned screen reader technologies. I mean, that's stuff that I provided my students when it comes to their devices that they're utilizing within the class. Adding a story to the actual lesson, especially you don't necessarily think of it when you're speaking about algebra, but you have to try to make those connections for these students to have them understand it in a way that's easier for them, right? Meeting them where they learn. So that's how I approached it when I was in education. And so I've converted that whole mindset into thinking of, okay, well, how can we meet our clients, our customers, our end users where they are? And what you'll realize is that maybe you don't have to change everything. And that's a misconception that you do when you're in a user experience, is that when you get in, you're like, oh man, you want to include this, that, and third. But instead, you may just need to strip up the parts and exclude some of the things and make the flow, the user experience much easier for your users.
I wonder if you have a time in your UX career where your background in doing accessibility for students or maybe even teachers helped you solve a challenge that you were facing in your current role. So I think about how maybe there's something that you knew about screen readers or some type of accessible experience that you knew from your teaching experience that helped you to solve a challenge that you had in your current UX space. And that may or may not be true, but I wondered if there was any examples of that where you were like, okay, well, I tried this when I was teaching, so maybe this might work in this case for UX design.
Yeah, I think, so I wouldn't necessarily label it as a challenge. More so, it's a light bulb idea.
Mm.
And some of the things that I did when I was prior to where I am now is think about, well, how do people receive information? And what I noticed is that the generation that we're in now, oh, they love themselves in videos. They love the graphics. They love the visuals, what's being said to them. It sparks them to, purchase the product. It sparks them to follow along with someone's stories. So what I realized is that's something that we should maybe lean into a little bit more. While I was doing my own projects, right? Prior to me getting any sort of role for UX, I was doing my own projects, and I was trying to harness that whole idea. And that's where I came up with the whole Lacarta app, which, I mean, you could think of it as social media for restaurants, right? You can see the foods that you are on the menu and see a visual of it. Because if you realize you go to a French restaurant, and sometimes authentic French restaurants, they'll say their food in French, which is fantastic for them, but not everybody reads French. So what does that food look like? You'll have to guess. You'll have to, take out your phone, translate it yourself, and try to get it to understand what's going to be had. I mean, hey, let's include that visual. Oh man, that looks appetizing. I this like, you're scrolling essentially at the restaurant, the restaurant's menu, and seeing the various foods that are there. And so I took that whole concept and I try to apply it to the things that I am in now, right? And try to meet and try to get people to see more of a visual of of what it is that they're trying to do instead of just having the reader technologies.
Okay, got it. Got it. So I wonder about teachers, I'm always wondering about teachers, right? I'm wondering about teachers that are transitioning to the UX space or are new to the UX design space. I guess, how can they kind of like translate their teaching skills or explain like in an interview that they know how to address accessibility concerns when it comes to products or people?
Yeah, I think about where I was as special education teacher, and I think about all the different IEP meetings that I had to run, right? You're spearheading meetings here. You have your stakeholders, obviously the parents, some sort of an admin if you have a special education coordinator in the room. Typically, if you need be, you'll have also an assistant principal, and you function and you run your meeting as such, right? You're giving a brief of the student, where they are, right? I mean, this is almost like wash off, wash on when it comes to a product, unfortunately, because you're giving a brief of where we currently are and how can we get to the next step. If you boil it down to those 2 points. So within the space of school, I mean, when you are, as a teacher, you've already done this. You know how to run these meetings. You've spoken with stakeholders.
Right.
High level stakeholders who can provide pushback. No, I want my child to be able to do this, that, and the third. So you have to receive those insights, and you have to try to convey, hey, you know what? Okay, let's come with a better idea, whether it's reconvening or if it's like, all right, let's take your insights and we'll try to apply it.
Mhm.
Right. So you have this experience already. And this is just coming to like speaking to stakeholders and also presenting to stakeholders, right? So you have that experience already. Not only do you have the experience of presenting, providing this information to the parents, but you also know how to present these insights. You have the insights, the grades, the behavior tracker, if it's something that's, so that's the behavior, they're struggling with dyslexia or any of those other disabilities that some of these students have, you have those insights already, and you've already done the research on how you can provide the best support for the student. And now it's up to you to try to take that information, provide insights. So if you think of it that way, you're capable enough to be able to look at it as a user researcher. If you want to be a designer, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more technical. And I want most people to know that being a researcher and being a designer, although although UX is like a broad topic, they're two different things, vastly two different things. Because not only are you doing that, you're building these products, you're building the prototypes, the wireframes and such. So that just takes time and also practice to get better at. So I can't say that you're going to know how to do that immediately. Yeah. However, you could take any of these courses that are available to us, some of them free, some of them, you can pay for, but also there are a wealth of information when it comes to LinkedIn, providing snapshots on how you can, improve your design. So I can speak to the designers here. But as for the researchers, what it takes to get your child or your student to the next level. You've researched this, you've went to school, you know all of this information. You just have to apply it.
Right. And I appreciate you sharing that honest bit about just if you're in the UX design space, it's a little bit more technical because we do have to identify, if there are gaps coming from the teaching space, and not every teacher has that technical background. And you may have to take some courses and try to fill in that knowledge gap about accessibility.
Absolutely.
In your current role in your company, do you feel like you have to advocate for inclusive design, or do you feel like it's already built in, baked in? I know sometimes in some places you have to really fight for it.
I will say that it's not a fight. However, it's not thought of, right? And it's not thought of intentionally, right? It's not a willful ignorance. It's just not considered because, hey, within that sphere, their clientele is this, right? Their clientele are Gen Xers, these people who have been in the industry for 25 years. They know how to input information. They don't need this extra information. However, we are thinking about, all companies are thinking about how to become, get on the cutting edge and provide a better product. And so I don't think it's a fight for me. I think it's easy for me to implement. Hey, you know what? I think we should start targeting, our client, emails, deep link emails, stuff like that, and provide a better UI for the emails, right? Something that is much easier for the user to navigate, right? As opposed to giving block text or send an email that people gloss over, So just thinking about those different things. Also, as I mentioned, I really can't say it enough. Providing subtitles for videos so that people can follow along, whether it's a quick video for a hint on how to access something within the platform. Providing subtitles for that is an enormous help. Why? Because not everybody is following along, and some people are distracted when they're doing work. So they may not have caught something and they are trying to rewind the videos and listen. No, you can help them out by providing some of those subtitles. So I don't say that it's a fight for me. I just think that it's something that comes with the territory now for my job.
Okay, that makes sense. I think it's so important to consider how people are going to consume your content and making sure that it's accessible in so many different ways so that your users can really take advantage of it. Because I think a lot of times we put things out there, and because people who are designers or researchers think, oh, this is great, sometimes we fail to really think about, putting it in front of different types of users, and including users with disabilities, for example, to really see how we can make those improvements. Because a lot of times the users with disabilities, as an example, don't really come into play when it comes to the participant, base that we do for UX research.
And something I'd like to add on that is that I think I mentioned it earlier, but less is more when it comes to some of these things. And I know, coming within the space, I'm speaking to one of my managers and saying, hey, I'm seeing these insights and it looks like people are struggling with this. And we go through it and they follow along what I'm seeing here. And then we see that it's not that large of a population. And if you think about implementing one of those changes when it comes to that sort of access, hey, I want to include just a hint icon here or info icon here just to allow them to see exactly what this is. If you're not seeing that much traffic to it, you may want to pause on executing on something like that just because, hey, it takes a lot of manpower and resources to make a change within a specific platform. So, and I mentioned this because it's the same thing with our students. You don't need a whole binder full of resources for your students. You're supposed to meet them where they are. And that's just a little nugget that I'm realizing that, as I am within this field, it may seem like, oh yeah, you're going to change everything. No, you may want to just observe and receive all the information that you can and then tweak rather than make major changes.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Definitely have to weigh the risk and see if it even makes sense to make that type of change. And that's why it's so important to just really know the data behind the products that you're working on, Yeah.
100%.
And so I think the last thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you see the future of accessibility in UX evolving?
I think it's hard to say, honestly, specifically in the United States, the current climate that we're in. It's interesting. We're in more of a wait and see space to see how things shape up, because there are going to be different decision makers when it comes to making these products. And as the good intentions that they may not consider all backgrounds or races and such. So, and I'm not saying that makes or breaks the product at all. I do think that considering those things allows for a wider breadth of product. So I can't say for sure how we're going to receive it, especially since, some of these layoffs that continues to happen, especially within the UX sphere. What I can say that I would like to see is I would like to see us focus on the small nuances of what makes a product great. And what I mean by that is just seeing how or just seeing how we can get where we are to a better product when it comes to AI and something like that. I don't want it to get to a point to where we're taking away that human interaction is what I'm saying. I know we're going to go far and beyond with AI. I would rather us consider that human interaction, and when it comes to the accessibilities, that's the thing that changes things.
Makes sense. Makes sense. AI is a whole nother, even layers onto the accessibility even more. So
Yeah. What I mean, like, AI is what you make it, right? However, it really cannot consider the nuance of someone's race or someone being dyslexic. I mean, that's something that people have to be in place for to consider those things. And I know we're going to get into a space where we're just trying to make the fastest minimum viable product and put it out there. And AI is going to be passive for that. But it's not considering the nuances of a product.
a lot of different levels and types of bias in the whole AI world to be mindful of. So we'll have to hold on and see how that all plays out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Accessibility is a topic that, it's very deep and very, detailed. We can talk about accessibility for long, long, long hours. And there's just so many different aspects to it. We really just only scratched the surface in this conversation, but I appreciate you coming on to share how you approach accessibility and inclusion in UX. And I know that the listeners will take away so much from this conversation and start to connect those dots between accessibility in the teaching space to accessibility in the UX space. So I want to thank you again for coming on and just sharing a little piece of your world with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Z. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry if that last bit was a little bit long-winded. I was trying to explain how, because it really is hard to quantify how AI is going to make a change, but then how accessibility is used, right? I mean, you just have different people getting access to information, and you just want to consider that. But thank you for having me on. I really appreciate having this talk, and especially about accessibility. This is something that's so near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. And we have your Instagram handle and your LinkedIn. And we'll put that in the show notes and in the description if folks want to reach out to you. Thank you. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you like this podcast, hit follow and scroll down to leave a 5-star rating, then share it with a friend. If you're looking for resources to help you on your tech transition journey, head over to uxteacherprep.com. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at uxteacherprep for daily tips and motivation. Have a topic you'd like to hear addressed on the show? Send us a DM on Instagram. If you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be well.
Thanks.